What it is, y'all, it's your old boy Pilg, and if this is your first time to the channel, consider dropping a subscribe, because today we need to talk about Wistoria episode number 4. But for those that are fairly new to the channel, I see the analytics, a lot of y'all are. Basically, we cover everything Omori on this channel. We've talked at length about Danmachi Omori Freeze, the new Danmachi game. Obviously, same author that does the Danmachi light novels, actually does the Wistoria manga. So all this is just kind of come full circle, I guess you could say. So let's jump into episode 4. Now, unlike episodes 1, 2, and 3, 4 wasn't the most groundbreaking episode. However, let me just say, this was a complete lore-building episode, and I think it's something we've actually needed. So while on the face of it, it did kind of feel like a little bit of a cooldown from what we've seen in the prior episodes, let's be honest here. This series did what it needed to do. It came out of the gate, and it came out of the gate hard. It came out of the gate fast. It was just absolutely trying to grab your attention and get you interested in the story. This episode is kind of a slowdown and a little bit of a background on everything that you need in order to kind of understand the world itself. I really talked about the animation quality and all that stuff. Let's just kind of get into some general reviews before we actually get into the spoilers and all that good stuff. So, on the face of it, one of my favorite things I love to kind of contextualize is the animation quality. And in this series versus Danmachi, there's really no comparison. In fact, I'm going to be honest with you guys, after this series, when Danmachi Season 5 comes out, I'll be way more harsh on the animation, just because this studio runs circles around JC Staff. No questions asked. Absolutely no questions asked. So even in an episode like this, where there are some slower moments, it still is like JC Staff maybe at their best. I hate to say that, but it's just downright true. You're talking about a much older studio versus a studio that definitely is using some of the more modern techniques. So, animation-wise, I'm going to give this episode... See, it ranges, because there's some stuff at the beginning that's like a solid 8, but, and I know people get on me for being really harsh, but let's face it, 5 is your average? 8's a good number. Like, 8's a solid animation quality. Like, it's a nice place to be at as a studio. So, well, the beginning of the episode and maybe the parts of the end of the episode, I'd say the beginning of the episode was like a solid 8. Middle of the episode, we're probably more in like the 6 range, and maybe by the end of the episode, we're back to like a 7. Now, that's not a slam on the animation. Basically, what they did is they slowed down. You can see at the beginning, we're like full 24 frames a second with certain parts of the episode. And it's what it needs. The action needs to be fast-paced and action-packed. When they're fighting the golems, it's in your face, and it's there. But when we get to the slowdown parts in the middle, where we're talking about the lore, we're talking about background of the characters, things like that, we'll get into that here in a moment, it does slow down a bit, and it kind of needs to. So you're more in like the 12 frames per second range, and it's okay. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. It feels like a classic anime at that point, and it's a comfortable place to be. So while I do give it a 6, I will say, on average, probably about a 7, just being real. It's not a bad place to be, and it's where it needs to be more story-driven, so it's not distracting you from the story. Because there's a lot of series now that we have where the animation is trying to be a 10, while the story's trying to be a 10, and they just battle for supremacy, and it gets distracting. And I think we kind of know some of those series that I'm referring to. When the animation slows down, you can pay more attention to the story, you can absorb more of the story, there's a lot less distraction going on. So when I say it's a 6, that's not a bad thing. It's better than average, but, you know, it's definitely not top tier. So, at that rate, fantastic. Overall, a 7 animation quality. I love it. The music is always right there. The music is a solid 8. The soundtrack constantly does what it needs to do to get you driven and get you involved. Whoever the sound designer is, and I apologize, I actually haven't delved that far into it, is doing a fantastic job, and I applaud them for that, because it's wonderful. Like, always top marks on that. Story-wise, now this is the kind of episode that I was waiting for. I would say the story is where this really picks up, and this is a solid, like, I can't give it a full 8.5, but I can't give it just an 8. I'm going to say like an 8.25, 8.3 range, which I know is a weird place to be, but at the same rate, I'm loving the story. Now, we've gotten kind of a normal everyday. I'd say that the story at this point has been kind of like a 6. It's a good story. It's just, we see a lot of these types of things. But now we're getting a lot of the lore. We're starting to learn about the dwarves. We're starting to learn about the elves. We're starting to learn, like, the hierarchy. We've already kind of seen that the magical students at the school really do kind of come. I think a lot of us who went to, like, a public high school remember those cliques that were just the place to be and the people to be around. And they weren't always the most savory people. This obviously turns that up to 11, and it's not an abnormal play. I mean, it's very... It is the trope, and you have to do this to build up your protag to make your everyday guy a little more special. But what I really like, and the reason that I'm going to give it such high marks, is because they deviate from that a lot to really give you background on characters that normally would just kind of blend in. And it really started to remind me a lot of the lore of the dwarves and everything like that from Danmachi. Obviously, same writer, he's going to do that. And he does borrow a lot from his product. That's why I can't really go much higher than 8.5, because it does borrow from the lore of the other series, and it's really easy to see that this is almost like that series just later on down the timeline. So, except minus the deities. But never the deities, all were like, now we're done here, we're going back up. So, nevertheless... solid series, solid story, very intrigued so far. Now, to kind of discuss what happens here in the episode, we're introduced to this kind of tournament at the beginning where everyone's basically striving to use their magic to beat these golems. And obviously Will, our protagonist, doesn't really have any magical power, so he's kind of at a major loss. He's not really able to produce like everyone else is able to produce. And there's a moment where he goes in to punch the golem, and I was waiting for that. I was waiting for like him to just show his strength and use his brute force. And I was a little let down initially, and I'll get to why that wasn't a huge letdown in the end. Initially, I was a little let down that he didn't just go all out. But we've already determined that he does need a sword in order to protect some of the magic. If you actually pause at the halfway mark screen, you'll get a little bit more information on his familiar Kiki, but we do kind of get a little snippet of what his familiar is all about when she takes down the magical barrier, and you find out that, of course, there's an underground gambling pool about, who's going to make it to the top tier and all this stuff. So you just get all this world building, and then in the end, basically about the mid part of the episode, Will mentions he has to go to work, and you can really see the difference here between all the people that are just kind of kept, for lack of a better way to put it, and Will, who's just got to strive for literally everything. Literally just has to strive for everything in his life. And I think a lot of us can very much, especially in this economy, can very much empathize with that. So it's really good to see that. And he talks about how much he admires the dwarves, because the dwarves' land was just kind of destroyed, and they moved here, and they're very much, I'm not going to go too deep into it because it gets into a sketchy kind of conversation, but the dwarves obviously are very badly looked down upon. They are the drudges of society, according to most people, at least as far as we've come to learn. And Will very much appreciates them and talks about that. So, you get all of these really great things that are making the story more deep and more enjoyable. And while I would say, on the face of it, yeah, this is where the animation starts to take a nosedive, that's when you're introduced to old boy behind me, who we saw at the beginning is just kind of a show-off. He's obviously one of the KEP students. He's one of the upper echelon, and he's obviously, I think he's the highest, if I recollect him. I've only watched the episode once, but I think they mentioned he's the highest, or one of the, at least the top 3 highest-ranking students in the class right now. And he uses this magic literally just to show off that takes out everybody else's golem with ease. I mean, you see him just, and then he creates a rose out of the ice, and it's just, he's that typical pretty boy trope. But this dude's nasty, and this dude's probably, I'd say, if the normal nasty guy, this guy's probably maybe 1-2 ticks above that, only because he deliberately goes out of his way to go somewhere to antagonize all these people. He doesn't just kind of keep to himself, turn his nose up and go, ugh. No, this guy's out there looking for trouble. And you're always kind of like in the back of your mind, like he knew Will worked at this place. Like he pretends like he didn't, but I kind of feel like he knew, and I kind of feel like it's pretty common knowledge. And so he goes in there and just starts shooting his mouth off. And you see the dwarves they're mad. Like they've been insulted. They're proud people. And Will gets up and gets in his face and is like, "You're going to take that back." And he kind of takes a couple of hits, and he lets this dude use his magic on him. And at one point, he's pinned against the wall. And the dude comes up, and he's just like, literally, Will's just kind of like pinned against the wall, staring him down. And the dude's like, "Fine, enter the magical tournament." And he's like, "Okay, bet." Smashes the thing. And you're like, he could have done this the whole time. Dude is like actually showing restraint. And because I would not have been able to in that situation. Now, it would have been like, "Cool, Magic Man, you're going down." Because, he can't take a hit. So I cannot wait. So they leave you on this big cliffhanger and if you watch the end of the episode, they're leading up to this big tournament that they're talking about that happens every 2 years. And you know that after this lore building episode, the next episode looks like it is going to be nuts. And I cannot wait to get that final showdown. So while some of the ratings might be a little low, I think they're that sweet spot where the series kind of needs to be in order to focus on the stuff that's most important. So overall, I'm going to say episode just in total, probably a solid 8 out of 10. And I know that's kind of weird because that doesn't work out for the averages. I'm just that engrossed in the series, and every episode at this point has either been an 8 or a 9, and I'm ecstatic. I can't wait for more. I watched a lot of anime in my days, and this one is one I think is going to stick with me. Now, I hope they don't fumble at the end. I've heard great things about the manga. I'm going to start picking up the manga here very soon, and obviously I'm a big Omori fan, so I'm going to be doing that. I have almost all the light novels for Danmachi. So this is definitely going into my reading list extremely soon, and then we can start talking about it. And I'll probably wait till after this series is concluded, after the season is concluded, I should say, to really start talking about that. But I'm excited. This is going to be a lot of fun. So cannot wait for next week. Let me know what you guys thought in the comments down below. Like, comment, share. Do you think my criticisms are too harsh? Obviously, I don't. We could disagree. We can agree to disagree, but that's what the comments are for. So let me know what you guys think, and I'll catch you guys on the next Wistoria episode review in about a week's time.